Hi everyone. Firstly, my thanks to Kate for running the last hour so expertly and our fantastic speakers for adding so much. I hope you're enjoying the day so far. I've really enjoyed watching the chat roll in over the last hour, and I know there was a brief moment where we lost the stream for a few people. These sadly are the risks of doing these things live, but we got it back up and running quickly. Just keep talking to us in the chat if you have any problems, and use the help desk tag. We can address things nice and quickly, and we got it all back up and running for you very quickly. And a reminder, of course, if you do miss anything during the day, it's all available for you on the site for 14 days after the conference, so you can check that out at your leisure, in the same way as you can check out the on-demand videos that are on the site right now. My job coming back here is to introduce our second keynote speaker of the day, and I'm delighted to be joined by Steve Ingham, the Chief Executive of PageGroup. Steve, how are you?
Very good, thank you, Neil.
Well, firstly, thanks for joining us this morning. Really appreciate your time. PageGroup is an enormous global leader of our industry, operating from the UK. So I suppose the first question I might ask is, what are you seeing looking across the group's businesses in different markets around the world about how the economy's, fingers crossed, recovering from the ups and downs of the last 18 months?
Thank you. We are seeing a good recovery, and I think that's the first thing to say. It's not consistent everywhere. Some are recovering faster than others, and strangely, it's not related necessarily to the number of COVID cases or vaccinations. You take our business in India, we are having record month after record month, which is quite staggering, bearing in mind the human tragedy and so on that's going on. And it's the same in Latin America, in Brazil. Again, we read dreadful headlines, and on the other hand, business is good. It culminated with us, I can't talk about this month yet, but in March we were 2% below 2019, so March 2019, which was a record year for us. So 2% down with considerably lower costs, so and also lower headcount. So the reality of that is that our productivity, so per person in the business, was higher than it's ever been in our history. So a real success in terms of how it's come back, and why. I think lots of reasons, I'd like to think, but three, I suppose, key ones. We started as soon as some certainty started to return to the marketplace after Q2 of last year, we started to invest quite heavily, and I think that investment is paying off. We hired 700 people from the competition in the last 12 months. That's definitely helping. We continue to roll out new IT programs we'd already committed to, and our investment in high potential markets such as Southeast Asia, China, the US, Latin America, Germany are really paying off. They're now representing over 35% of the group, and I think that's been really important. The use of video continues. From CEO down, we have recruited people into companies without a face-to-face meeting. And whilst that's not always going to be the case, it's certainly helping us reduce the time to hire. And that is very significant. You can measure it country by country. For every day you're taking off, it makes a consultant more efficient, which helps their productivity as well. And there's going to be a strong element of that that's going to stay, I believe, into the future.
I think that's really interesting. In fact, we're just hearing from the last panel, Steve, the sense of what might we keep, and that piece of keeping hold of some of those technological and productivity improvements that we've discovered during the crisis is really important. The most obvious one that keeps Kate and I going every day is the ongoing quest to retain digital right to work checks, and trying to beat that into the Home Office every morning. Why don't we talk a little bit about that theme around technology and how technology is changing the industry, because I think there's a couple of big environmental issues that will affect the industry in every jurisdiction. One is how tech will move on and how the industry can benefit from that rather than be outcompeted by it. Let's start there, and then maybe we might go on and talk a little bit about the differing position for candidates going into the recovery.
Yeah, and it's always a difficult thing to prove, isn't it, or justify when you're talking to, in my case, shareholders. Will technology kill us, or will it actually enhance our operations and make us more efficient? Clearly, I'm a believer in the latter, and it has moved immeasurably. I mean, my career is a long one in recruitment, some 35 years, where I come from a starting point where there was almost no technology, to the point where, following it, probably 10 years of investment at Page, we've really got leading technologies. We're using them to the limit, and it's been a long and challenging path, without doubt, to get to that place. We continue to roll out innovations during the last 12 months. The most significant, where we're using all of the data that Page has, alongside data that we get from LinkedIn, from job boards, candidate boards around the world. We use that data to create information to make better decisions, to help our clients make better decisions as well. Everything from clearly the levels of salary they're offering, but what candidate supply looks like in certain geographies, where they can access the right candidates, and so on. And all of those investments, I think, are absolutely key. It's making, you linked it there to sustainability and so on. I mean, without doubt, because I was arranging interviews back in the day where everybody had to get in their car or somehow transport themselves to an interview. Whereas a lot, particularly of that pre-screening early interview stage, can now be done by video, which is clearly going to help to save the planet in some small way. So a lot of those investments are really, I believe, helping productivity, helping the efficiency of what we do. That's helping companies, it's helping the environment, and I think it's helping our clients in a big way.
Really interesting question from Naz in the chat box just now, which I'm going to pick up with, which is when you talk about improving productivity, I mean, measuring productivity in service businesses is famously difficult. It's not like a factory, even though the Bank of England insists on measuring national productivity like we all run factories. What's your approach to measuring that productivity within a complex services business like Page Group?
Yeah, I think recruitment has a bit of an advantage over some for example, marketing services agencies, where it's a little bit more difficult to justify their productivity or explain their productivity. I mean, in the simplest form, we measure it on the basis of the gross profit, revenue, as we call it in the industry, divided by either the number of fee earners or probably in the most perfect way, the number of staff that we have. And that is a strong indication of the productivity you're achieving. But there are others which we use as well. So, the number of interviews that we manage per month, or the number of placements, or, the number of temps that we're putting out to work, or whatever. There are a variety of ways, but the ultimate measure is gross profit per fee earner or per headcount. And like I say, that's where we got to the end of Q1, reaching a record level, which I think is really interesting when you've got 75% of people working from home. A good place.
One more tech question before we get onto the people, because it is a people industry. You talked a lot about using the data that Page has a second ago, and I think that's super important. But of course, one of the challenges is data is not scarce now. It's being able to see find the signal amongst the noise that is really the difference maker. Have you changed how you use your data inside Page to find that signal more easily?
Yeah, because you can, clearly the data we have also tracks not just what they either want to put up onto a computer, such as LinkedIn, where they can put a profile which they believe describes them. We can also record behaviors, how many interviews they went to, how well they did at those interviews, all of these different things. So, and we can monitor the trends that we're seeing in those marketplaces. So it's not down to an individual level that we're feeding information out, but it shows the trend. So you can break it right down to categories of people, certain specialisms like engineering, for example, geographies clearly, management level, job titles, all of these different things. And I think you're right, there's a lot of data out there, Neil, but it's the richness of the data that you have that gives real insights to trends, to business, to help make decisions and so on. And I think that's the importance. And, with 7,000 people across 37 geographies, with a 45-year history and as a business, we've got a lot of that data, but we don't just use that data alone. I mean, like I say, we use data from job boards, candidate boards, and government data to make sure that data is validated as well.
So let's take it up a little then and move towards the people from the technology, because really what your data is doing is it's telling you about people. It's a people business. We've been through a lot of change in the last 18 months in every jurisdiction that Page Group's working in, but nowhere more than here in the UK. Do you think that the position is changing in terms of candidate interest and candidate attraction by comparison to what we saw before the pandemic? Are we ever going back to that 2019 world, or is there a different approach to candidates and how candidates will work coming out of this that will stick around?
Without doubt, and whether I take the evidence from my workplace or from my daughters or whatever, there is undoubtedly changes, and they're important to understand. Otherwise, I suspect businesses are going to struggle. Your previous guests, mentioned some of the headlines, which I think are really, really important. But let's just describe this horrific period we've been through, very testing for many people in many different ways. But certainly, it's been a time for reflection. I think a lot of people, have evaluated or looked at their own lifestyles, where they live, who they live with, possibly, the job they're in, the company they work for, all of these different things, as was previously said by James. I think, how they were communicated with by the company they worked for, by the leaders of that business, all of these different things they are evaluating. And I think with particularly the broader workforce, millennials, or Generation Z, whichever, they are judgmental, and they will look at that and they will go, right, what's important to me, and does that sit well with where I'm at the moment? If not, I'm going to change it. It's as simple as that. So we are getting unprecedented levels of candidate movement, and which will create churn in the industry. And the companies that get it right will be the ones that have less of an issue. The ones that have got it wrong and don't look like they're about to change or aren't moving in the right direction, they're going to struggle, without doubt. And D&I, ESG, CSR, wonderful initials, but clearly hugely important. These things are really, really critical to young people today. And we saw that during the last 18 months. And I think that if companies aren't getting it right, they are going to really, really struggle with the obvious things. And I think, I've met a lot of CEOs over the years, many I would count as friends. The reality is, the first and fundamental rule we all understand, as you say, is that every business, to every business, people are important. And, if you were to summarize what's important, it's attracting the best talent, motivating it while it works for you, and then making sure you retain it. Absolutely key. So listen to them and what their needs are, and you'll achieve that.
I think that's really interesting. Just putting it together with what we heard from the last panel as well. We've talked a lot for years about employee value propositions, and there's probably two takeaways from that. One, it's not about what you say, it's about what you do. And secondly, it applies just as much to us as recruitment businesses as it, in terms of our own staff, as it does to what we're doing to help clients, I think. We've got a few minutes left, Steve, and I wanted to make sure that we talked a little bit about something that you spent a lot of time on over the last few years since coming back to work, and that's the issue of disability employment. Now, many people on the conference will have heard about your accident and your return to work, but could you just share a little bit about what happened to you and your journey back to Page Group after your recovery?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's just over 2 years ago now. You know, everything was fine, and then I went skiing, like a lot of us do, and you know, I made a split-second decision on the first day in very poor weather that wasn't very clever, and got me in a huge amount of trouble. You know, in the middle of a slope, I would have just fallen over and wiped out badly and probably been fine. But it was just at the point I was meant to be going over a bridge. So I missed the bridge and went into what basically the bridge was going over. So it wasn't clever. I had a lot of injuries and came very, very close to death. I was in a coma afterwards, after I managed to get help. Nobody saw the accident. So my first issue was actually getting rescued, which took a while. So I also had hypothermia to contend with. But, you know, I did, and I got rescued, and I did come out of the coma, and, you know, after several operations, I'm told, and, you know, I started to recover, which started with 2 weeks in Switzerland and then 3 months in hospital here. I started to come back to work during that period while I was in hospital. I had fortunately a private room, so I could talk on the phone. I could video, you know, message people. I could send messages to all my staff about what had happened. And the reality is that, you know, all CEOs are not bulletproof. We all have challenges and vulnerability, and you know, clearly mine have been exposed. You know, and what that meant for me and what I was going to do about it, and what it meant for my family as well, most importantly. And you know, it's something certainly a father never wants to put their daughters through, and that is them turning up in Switzerland to witness their father on a life support machine. Not good, and certainly no father should try to attempt to do that, or certainly should try and avoid it. So, you know, I was lucky. I started to transition back to work when I was in hospital. A lot of my colleagues have worked with me for 25, 30 years, so they came to see me. So I guess that broke the ice of actually going back to work for the first time. When I got out, I was facing, I think, some of the challenges that the disability category faces. The first was I was having a house renovated prior to the accident. Clearly, that had to undergo some changes in terms of the planning, a lot of planning permission to have a lift so that I could get around the house. You know, the first thing I therefore needed to do was rent a place to stay in. Well, that was being done. The flat I had previously was on the 3rd floor with no lift. And I found out very quickly how difficult it is to find accessible accommodation. I'm in a wheelchair, so, you know, I need a place with no steps. That's basically all I need. I'm lucky. My needs are low, but trying to find that and renting a place, fairly open on location, fairly open on cost, because I knew it was short term, really difficult. And unfortunately, an ex-colleague basically moved out of their apartment because they knew it was appropriate and let me live there for 6 months with my fiance. So I was very lucky, but that was the first battle I had to go through. The next was going to the office. Physically, that was easy. Mentally, for me, it was easy. I could imagine for some it would be difficult. I think partly because I've been going to board meetings close to the hospital. I did a trading update from the boardroom of the hospital. I'd met so many of my colleagues. I'd been talking to them by video and getting a lot of message from individuals. So it was slightly emotional going back, but I didn't announce that I was coming back. I just sneaked in one day and rolled into my office. So it was fine.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Steve. And I know you were in the thoughts throughout that year of many people across the industry, having been with us in the industry for as you said yourself, over 30 years. So I think it's a joy for everyone in the industry to see you looking so well today on the call. Let me just finish with one question, because I think that whole experience must have opened eyes for yourself, for colleagues, certainly opened my eyes in the discussions that we've had about the challenges that we face with disability employment. And of course, famously, the UK has a shockingly high disability employment gap. What can we do as an industry to help with that? Because we're in many ways uniquely positioned.
Yeah, I mean, we have to embrace it. And look, I wouldn't say we'd finished the journey at Page before my accident by any means, but we had started working on it. We've been doing a lot on diversity and inclusion since I became CEO 15 years ago. And we've moved the needle, we've moved the data, we've moved the analysis of our performance is good, going in the right direction. In some areas, achieve what we wanted to achieve. So, for example, in the population of Page, 55% are women. So we've definitely moved the gender dynamic, but we haven't got it right at all levels, and that's improving, but not fast enough. So we're now taking more actions to improve it. We'd also focused on ability at Page, and our primary focus was on mental health, because with so many young people in what is a high pressure environment, performance environment, we estimated that this would be a challenge, and a lot of people showed the courage to come out and talk about that, because in most cases mental health is an invisible disability. So we'd started to work on it. What I witnessed during my period was I came in contact with a lot of people in a similar situation to myself who'd had a spinal injury, ranging from very high level injury to a low level injury like mine. So what I witnessed, I guess, a lot of great people who were overcoming incredible challenges, showing incredible courage to do that. It's definitely not easy, showing that they were going to have to develop new skills to cope. And perhaps if I could just talk about those and perhaps try to just turn people's views, if I need to, hopefully not, a little bit. And I suppose people look at the disability category as confusing, difficult to understand, because it does range from mental health to spinal injuries, with a whole range in between: cystic fibrosis, MS, literally blindness, etc., etc. And it is very, very complicated. And I think people don't necessarily understand all of those areas, understandably. They don't know what it would mean in terms of adaptation. They assume expense and challenges. They don't know how to ask questions, and they don't want to say the wrong thing because they might offend or get in trouble. So again, challenging. They probably think that most disabled people will need to take more time off, or probably won't hang around, or whatever. I personally think they're wrong. And I think you have to look at it in a different way. Just think of some of the resilience that some people must have with a disability. I cannot imagine, and there was an advert on television recently, with a blind lady asking Alexa, what the weather was outside. And I think Alexa said it was raining, so she put her coat on and then picked up the dog lead and stepped outside, and she couldn't see. She was blind. And I just thought, wow, the courage she has to go to work every day, or go out of her apartment and walk down the road and not be able to see what's in front of her. Absolutely staggering. And if I look at my own situation, I know now that things take a lot longer. Getting up in the morning and going to work, a simple process that took me, 27 and a half minutes in the morning before can take me anywhere between an hour and a half and 2 hours. So, whenever I have an investment call to make that's at 7:30 in the morning, I'm probably getting up at 4 to make sure I'm ready. So my time management, which I always thought was good, I traveled a lot and I had to be in the right place, the right time to get into the right plane, the right car, whatever it was, right meeting. I can tell you now, it's gone off the scale in terms of I had to improve things because, there's a lot of inefficiency with being disabled, which, we rectify. We have to overcome challenges every day. And sometimes they're as simple as getting a wine glass down from the top shelf when you're on your own. Or, they can be sometimes when you've fallen out of your chair, getting you back in the chair and so on. But overcoming challenges, disabled people have to deal with every single day. I think we've got to look at the positives. When we're looking for people, for example, coming out of university, 14% of people have a disability coming out of university. We look for certain qualities: courage, resilience, problem solvers, all of these different things, commitment. I believe disability offers us a wonderful pool of candidates that we've ignored. 20% of the population are disabled. You're right, there's a horrific gap between, the number that are employed, 50% roughly, 52%, versus able-bodied people who it's 80%. And I just think, therefore, there's a whole load of people that are just being neglected. And, I think companies need to change. The Valuable 500 suggests that's already happening. They've just passed their 500 signatory. It's a wonderful movement. Initially, perhaps I had some skepticism that it was just about getting signatures, but the projects that they're now driving through companies such as Apple, Microsoft, Google, and so on, these projects that will be delivered on will make an immense difference to leveling the playing field for disability. And I just think those companies that embrace it, especially because, like I said earlier, people want more diversity and inclusion in their businesses, I think will be the winners. Otherwise, we're missing out. And everyone talks about candidate shortages, wage inflation, and all of these different things. And here you've got a pool of talent that's, in some cases, being ignored.
Steve, that's incredibly powerful. And of course, there's so much support out there to help disabled people into work. There's a real sense that when you give people who perhaps struggle to find work an opportunity, they add value to your business, but they also add value to colleagues in terms of that resilience. So thank you for joining us today, and thank you for sharing that story. I think it's super important that we as an industry hear that message from you and take this moment as an opportunity to address that big gap in disability employment. So have a great rest of your day. Thank you for joining us, and it's great to see you looking so well.
Thank you. Good luck, everyone.
Thank you. Well, and thank you to all of you for joining us for that session. We're on a break now until 11:55, so go and check out the networking or the on-demand areas. At 11:55, we've got the launch of our breakout sessions. If you can't see the breakout screens at that time, just refresh your screen and you'll be able to then. And I'll see you all later.